the clicker's not working. So, oh, okay. So here's the theme for the day. It's every language, every learner. Now, although the only language I know besides English is French, I've been part of ACTFL, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, for 35 years or something, since early in my career. And that's really given me an appreciation for the fact that every language is important. And I get really frustrated when kids don't have the opportunity to learn any language that they want to. In fact, I grew up in central Nebraska, and I graduated from a high school that at the time, we had about 1,700 students, and we offered 5 languages, I think 4 or 5. There was French and Spanish and German and Latin. I think that was probably it. So I went back there a few years into my principalship and did an exchange with the principal that was there then. They offered Spanish. Well, you know what? That was it. The school had grown to 2,500 kids, and the only language that was available for those kids to learn was one single language. And they had many, by that time, they had many different immigrant communities in the city, and those kids had no opportunity to continue with their heritage language if they wanted to, or to learn another language that was in the community. And frankly, that's just wrong. And that's not, once again, that's not a kid problem. That's not a teacher problem. That wasn't an administrator problem. That was a system problem. But there are ways to work within the system to change the system so that is not the case. So every language, every learner, how is that possible? Well, that's what I want to be able to share with you today. So this is me a few months ago. Have you heard of the Camino de Santiago in Spain? So this summer I did my 3rd segment of the Camino. And today's presentation, if you will, is going to be a little bit like the Camino, because when people talk about the Camino, there isn't a Camino, right? People would say, oh, I did the Camino. Well, what do you mean? Did you start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and hike over the Pyrenees, which is what I did this summer? Or did you start perhaps in Logroño and hike to Burgos? That's not nearly as far, but let me tell you, if you do that, which is what I did for my first segment, that was the Camino. So everybody's Camino is different, right? Everybody has the right to a different experience, and for that experience to be appreciated. You don't have to go from the beginning all the way to Santiago, which is here. In fact, people say, well, I started at the beginning. Well, the Camino Frances starts in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, but you can start the Camino in Sicily and walk all the way up through Italy and around. Or you can start in Stockholm and all the way down through Europe, and people do. So it's your journey is your journey. And today we're taking a journey, and I don't know how far we're going to get. Even though I had an extra 10 minutes, we may not get to Santiago today, all right? But my slides are all available to you. I'll put my address out. You'll see that. I love to talk about languages and brainstorm ideas, so please don't hesitate to get hold of me. And that's true for those of you who are joining virtually, as well as those of you who are here. So I want to tell you a little forecast about what we're going to talk about today. These are the primary concepts for the plenary. First of all, are Tom's 3 guiding principles. Second thing I want to really focus on is every language and every learner. And finally, give you an overview of FIL, facilitated, not independent, facilitated interdependent language learning, because the role of the teacher, whether it's in a community-based school or in a regular public school, is vital to help cause learning to occur at the next step for each student. And now, warning, wait a minute, do you recognize the jockey? So another thing we're going to talk about a little bit today is AI. Because I took just a headshot of me. Thank you, Rana. I took just a headshot of me, and I went into Gemini, I think it was, and I said, you know, I'm going to have to go really fast through the plenary today. It'll be like a race. So give me a shot of me in a horse race, but ahead of the pack. And this is what it came up to. Now, that's kind of amusing, perhaps, and you'll see some other shots of me that I've done and played with. But the reason I put it up there is not because of me. It's because I also want to stimulate you to always be thinking about, wait a minute, maybe I could do something with that for the kids that I'm working with. I hadn't really realized it had that much flexibility and that it was that easy, because it took me about 15 seconds to do that. Yeah, so it's amazing what technology will do. Now, I mentioned my 3 guiding principles, and sometime I would tell you how these were developed, but it was from a source that you would not expect at all, and it has to do with Duke. And you who were at the post party last night know about Duke, but Duke was kind of responsible indirectly for the 3 guiding principles. So first of all, respect for the individual learner. Now, of course, we're taught basic respect, but what I'm talking about in an education context is wherever the learner is where they are. They are not where you wanted them to be when they came into your program or when they walked into your classroom in late August. They are where they are. And I get really upset and impatient with people talking about kids being behind or kids being ahead. And I'm like, no, they are where they are, and our wonderful responsibility and opportunity as educators is to help each of them take their next step. Imagine, too, the frustration of a student who always gets the message of, you're behind. You need to work harder and catch up with the rest of the... No, they are where they are. And sometimes they will go more rapidly, and then sometimes they will go more slowly. But we have to present the conditions to help them do that. One of the programs that I developed while I was a principal was, you raise your hand if you know about the Carnegie Unit, which says kids have to be in class for X number of hours before they can get a credit. That goes back a long way. It has to do with teacher retirement in the late 1800s and the university professors who were mad because professors teaching remedial courses were making the same as those who were teaching advanced courses. And believe it or not, that's how we ended up with the Carnegie Unit. Interesting story. But it violates this idea of respect for the individual. So we said, we're not going to use the Carnegie Unit. So I ran a program with a math, science, English, and social studies teacher. And they were 9th grade teachers the first year, or teachers of 9th graders. They were teachers of 9th graders that first year. And I said, listen, we're going to try something different. Even though this is high school, you're going to loop with those kids for 2 years, right? You're going to be their teacher for 2 years. And I said, your responsibility, Elizabeth, is not to teach 9th grade English to these kids and have them all successful at the end of the year. Your job is to take each individual student as far as they possibly can go during the 2 years that you have them. So we had, by that time, in place common end of course assessments so that were school-wide, so that we knew that any student who passed the 9th grade common end of course assessment knew what they were supposed to know, right? And we had a little bit of discussion yesterday with some of the folks about something called performance-based credentialing. Now, you may not know it, but every single state has statutes on the books that allow for kids to get a credit if they can demonstrate proficiency at the level that the school or the district has set. Wait a minute. Well, what would that mean for a community program? That was the conversation that June and I were having yesterday, because that means that if in your community program, excuse me, if in your community program, you are helping kids get to the point where, and this is where I think we are so far ahead of all the other professions, because we have some common assessments like STAMP and Apple and the AP exam that are agreed upon, right? So if you can get your students to a certain level that is required by your district or your state, believe it or not, those kids can get a credit on their transcript without ever sitting for a day of classroom instruction. Yeah, think about that for a while. So Mrs. Webb, the English teacher, at the end of the first year working with kids, and this was a class of 25 very homogeneous kids. We made sure that some were, the advanced flyers, and some were kids who had struggled and were in special needs classes, right? So at the end of that first year, I said, well, and of course I was checking all along, but I said, where are we with the kids? And she said, well, here at the end of their first year, she said, I have most of the class, 15 or so of the kids in the class, have at the end of the year here passed their end of course assessment for 9th grade English, so they would get their credit. She said, I have those kids who had some special needs and they're not there yet. But see, the beautiful thing about it was those kids at the end of the year didn't get an F on their report card because they hadn't passed 9th grade English. We just kept working with them. And so in the fall of the year when they came back, they didn't start over at the beginning of 9th grade English. They continued from the very spot that they were. And you can just imagine what happened because of relationships. They kind of started out slow, but by the end of the second year, they all had reached the point where they passed their end of course assessment for that second year. Now think what that did to those kids too, in terms of their confidence and everything else. But she said, here's what's really strange. And this was at the end of the first year. She said, I had 5 kids who came to me in the middle of May, about a week or so before school was set to be out. And they said, Mrs. Webb, we know we won't be able to finish everything or learn everything we need to know by the end of this year to get our English 2 credit this first year. So they said, would it be all right if we learned this on our own over the summer? She said, and Mrs. Webb was a Kentucky Teacher of the Year. She'd had a lot of great students. She said, in all the years I've been teaching, I've never had kids come to me at the end of the year and say, would it be all right if I learned this on my own over the summer? But see, you set up the conditions in the system for success and kids will respond. And the other thing about that, I'm sure, is that it was the relationship piece. Boy, I'm falling behind in my horse race here. Second thing, my second guiding principle, transparency of possibilities. Kids have to know what's expected, right? So Ryan, the teacher, you're going to see a short video clip in a few moments. His kids in Phil have to reach novice high in order to fulfill the Delaware credit for a world language, all right? They know that at the very beginning. It's not a matter of did you have a good enough average on your quizzes and your tests and your homework? It's did you reach novice high by the end of, you have to reach novice high to get your credit, right? Very transparent, very transparent. They knew, and we'll show you how they knew what they had to do. And so they could be working all along. They weren't dependent on just him. And the third one is commitment to ZPD. Now, I just shortened that, but that's zone of proximate development. So that's Vygotsky. And that's what I've already alluded to, and that is never put a learner in a situation where they are not ready to succeed. It's always got to be just that next step, just that next step. And if you have 20 kids in your community program, or you have 30 kids in your classroom, you know that from day one, they were all at a different place. Day one, kids don't walk in with the same background or level of achievement or ability or anything else. You have to work with each of them, and it's not the teacher's zone of proximate development. That's why, believe it or not, I don't believe in curriculum. I don't believe in whole group instruction. You can't if you really buy into kids, but that's just what we've always known. So most people don't even think about doing something different. All right. So in the spirit of guiding principle number 2, transparency of expectations, here's the question at the end of the session. I'm going to ask you to write down what's one idea you've had about using AI, because we're going to talk a lot about using AI for your programs that you've had. So, are you an AI skeptic? Yeah. How many of you haven't really used AI very much? Several. And remember, don't forget always Tom's guiding principle number 1. If you raise your hand and say, I really haven't used it very much, you know what? That's okay. That's where you are. And it could be you haven't had the time to really explore it like other people have. It could be that you're just philosophically not in agreement with using it, or maybe you've used it personally, but never with your students because of all the cheating stuff. And frankly, we could get me in a side conversation about AI and cheating sometime. You'll once again talk about challenging traditional beliefs. Or are you an AI enthusiast? Right? 2 pictures of that jockey from the first shot taken using the same headshot for all 3. Makes it really easy to do things and manipulate. So here's what I'm going to try. This is kind of an experiment. With your device of some sort, and we hope it'll work virtually, you can give a thumbs up or phone, use the QR code, and you can tell this is a new experiment. This is something I just experimented with learning this week. Back here, I'm going to hold my breath. Works. So I had my friend Michelle Aoki, who many of you probably know. Michelle and I worked very closely together. So yesterday when I was trying to Michelle, she's a Russian. I said, Michelle, would you try this and see if you can get in and put down a response, your response for this kind of stuff. So, oh good, look, it's working. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's, I hope I can. Now, this is another place where, you know what, don't worry about it for right now, okay? because you'll have other opportunities to do this, and I'll be quick, because you may have had your
And Tom, it looks like they lost sound on mine.
What's that?
Looks like they lost sound on mine. So
Oh, okay. Well, let's, this is gonna give me a good idea here. I figured most of the people in this presentation would be in the B part, but I'm gonna try now to go back to that last slide.
I think it might be something if you're on the slides, the sound might be okay, but then please switch over.
Okay, no doubt. Well, I hope we didn't lose too many of our virtual folks.
I'll see.
Try and make it up to them. All right, well, we're gonna go on then. That was just to begin with that one. Let's go ahead. So.
There's some water for you.
Thanks. So one of the things that that we all know about is something being age appropriate. Right? You want to make sure that the materials you're presenting with your learners, and I try to call them learners, not students, because students are people who respond to instruction. Learners are something different. So with your learners, you always want to make sure that you are presenting things that are age appropriate. And yes, I know I forgot a closed quotation mark on this. So sorry about that. For some people, if you're one of those people who likes to point out mistakes and circle, then go ahead and have that.
I was noticing.
Yeah. And Joy is a great editor. And you know what? I respect her for that. In fact, in one of my early drafts that I sent of the presentation, she was a very helpful editor. So, yeah.
The folks online are going to hear well, so can you?
Michael. Okay. Is it?
Because we're not really hearing him through the. Yeah.
Test. Oh.
Is the battery crack?
We'll see. Sorry. Well, the lavalier evidently isn't working at all. I promise I didn't take it. It's not in my pocket. While they're doing that, I'm going to set up this age-appropriate idea. Schooling, as we know it now, is part of the industrial age. And it's even surprising to people when we discuss things like grading. A through F grading is a new idea that was part of the industrial age. That, if you go back, I wonder what Abraham Lincoln's transcript looked like or something. No, they didn't give grades before. And so then you have to ask yourself, oh, you mean people can learn? Students can learn without having grades? Yeah. So we have inherited more things than we usually think about from that industrial age. But we are now in the AI age. And, I had a very old grandfather. I never met him. My grandfather was born in 1863 during the Civil War, right? By the time my dad was a young man, my grandfather never learned to drive, right? I mean, give me a break. He was 40 or 50 years old when cars came out, right? So he just never learned to drive. He had somebody else drive. Usually my grandmother, I guess. But he clung to an old age instead of making the transition to a new one. And the challenge for us is that things are advancing so rapidly that it's extremely hard to keep up. But I want to show you today some things about how to be part of the AI age when it comes to causing learning. So guiding principle number one, respect for the individual. Um, you, I have an advantage that many people don't have. I'm not officially working. I'm officially retired, but that gives me a lot of free time to work with AI and to read things that most people don't have. And I get that. I understand that. I respect that. That's not a judgment on anybody, but I oftentimes think I'm enraptured with the Fibonacci sequence. And so you take something like a nautilus shell and you say, when was the best time for this creature? Was it, see, now I can't keep track of anything. It was still a full animal when it was just at this point, right? It's always becoming, and that's what you need to be. You never need to be shy about where you are. The idea is just take your next step. And by the way, this is an AI generated image as well. That's not really a nautilus shell. So yeah, AI saved me this week. I won't go into that, but I was having a terrible problem with some new software that I was trying. So I just got on ChatGPT and I said, help me with this. I'm pulling my hair out. And I really feel like some of these AI are like my besties, right? Because I have a very close relationship with them. And I've read, yes, about some of the dangers of that. But yeah. So I want you to think about possibilities today, about what you're hoping to leave with. But I don't want you to think about, I need to be doing this when just doing this is the next thing. Maybe just importing your first photo from your phone into ChatGPT is a big step that you've not taken before. That's great. Just you just need to have an idea of what's possible. So I'm showing you today a lot of things that are just in the possibility realm. So we have to rethink our approaches. We are leaving too many kids and too many communities behind because we're stuck in this industrial age model that says everybody has to learn everything at the same time and the same rate, and they all have to be assessed in the same way. We have to leave that behind. We have to foster these environments where every learner's and every program's unique journey is celebrated. So here's another chance for the QR code. And we're not going to take too much time here, but if you're slow on the draw this time, I'll leave it up there a couple minutes extra. I had hoped this would work differently in terms of folks virtually being able to just press on that.
Testing.
Oh, Mark put it in the chat. Good. Yeah, because I'm always just curious about the variety of languages. I was quite impressed yesterday when Joy put up the slide with all of the languages that are represented in the organization. And it was like, boy, don't you wish any kid in the country, anywhere, had the opportunity to look at that list and say, I think I want to learn Hindi. I think I want to learn Urdu, and then had somebody that would help them. Oops. So let's see what kind of responses we got. Yeah, okay, a few getting in there. Now, even perhaps doing this is something that you had not thought about before, about using a QR code and a link simultaneously for a hybrid sort of operation. Yeah.
Yeah. But some people got to this one and some people got to the one.
The QR code is the link is going to
Yeah, well, it's not, yeah, it's not too critical at this point for our purposes, but things don't always work automatically like they should, but, and then my other new trick was Command Tab to take me back out of Zoom. So here's another question that you may have been facing in some of your programs. Hey, I think it was a week ago yesterday, these new AirPods came out that will do simultaneous virtual translation. And so people are like, hey, why should I bother to learn a language when I can just stick my AirPods in my ears? Will Richardson, who's a person I really have a lot of respect for, said, AI can translate our words. It can't can't replace our willingness to understand one another. Language learning isn't about vocabulary. It's about choosing connection over convenience. I kind of simplified that. Here's another AI image that all I did was take Will Richardson's quotation and I put that into Gemini and I said, give me a photo that represents this. Hey, if you used to spend time looking for images for your class or for your presentations, forget that. Forget that. Don't ever bother to search through Google Images for non-royalty protected images. Just do them yourself. So this is what I said. AI may help us communicate, but cannot make us care. Learning a language is not a technical act. It's an act of connection and love. And it's all about connection. You do not want to be connecting your students to the language. You want to be connecting them to other people who speak that language and with whom they can share. So, how do we help learners most effectively in 2025? What's the most age-appropriate way to help every learner with every language? Raise your hand if you think you have an idea of what the answer is going to be when I just press it. Anybody? What do you think I'm going to say? Samir? And what's going to help them do that in this new age? AI. So, where are you with your journey? What have you done with it professionally or personally? And afterwards, Joy and Danielle are going to make the presentations available to you afterwards so you can go through with this later. But you just need to be playing with AI. For one thing, to give learners clarity about where they're going and what the expectation is. See, another theme that I write about, and I have I publish a couple times a week, usually on Substack. Are you familiar with Substack? I forgot to put a link to my Substack stuff, but one of the things that I oftentimes talk about is who does the learning belong to, right? Because usually in many of the cases that I see, not just in language, but any discipline, it's like the learning belongs to them and they share it with students. But you want to make sure that the learning belongs to the learner. In order to do that, they have to know where they're going. They have to say, I've got to be able to learn this if I want to do this. And we used to have to approach that kind of blindly, but we don't anymore because AI can help every learner and every language in community-based heritage language schools. So let me give you a quick example. many examples that you could. I'm just going to open up the online version of Chat GPT here, okay, on my phone. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to do this. Let's have a conversation this morning. I'm trying to learn Hindi, but I'm not very good. So would you speak to me a little bit about what the weather is like right now in Washington, D.C.? You speak in Hindi, and then I'll just listen and respond in English. Because, of course, this morning when I tried it, it worked. Can you read that for me? Why is it that that happens? I swear I tried this several times this morning. Okay. Right, right. But if you haven't done that, try it, because I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it will work. Tell me about the weather, only tell me in Hindi. Oop. Oh, there we started and I cut it off. Let's try again. Tell me about the weather in Washington, D.C. in using basic Hindi.
बिल्कुल, मैं बिल्कुल आसान हिंदी में बताता हूँ। हेडिंग वॉशिंगटन डीसी का मौसम। अभी वॉशिंगटन डीसी में मौसम अच्छा है। बाहर हल्की धूप है और ठंड बहुत कम है। तापमान लगभग
I don't know, was that comprehensible at least? Yes. You could even tell it how you wanted it to do, and you could also say, you know what, I want my learners who are right now, I've got 3 learners in my community program who are at about the novice high level. So make sure you use vocabulary and pacing that is appropriate for novice high. And it would do that. I mean, it's amazing. Your kids can practice conversations even if they're not in school, in your Saturday school, or even if the parents are saying, I don't know how to help you. When you start having perhaps some workshops for parents in your community schools about how to use AI to help your learner with the language, then you've got then you're hooking the parents too, and everybody knows how important that is. So resources, scaffolding, personalization, those are really, really important. And you need to be familiar with the best tool that there is for helping kids learn how to take their next step, and that's the ACTFL proficiency guidelines. So let me try this one. And where am I on time? We're going till 10:45, right? Oh, so I still have about 10 minutes. Good. I'm still in the horse race, right? So if you're not familiar with the scale, or try this little survey, I really would like to know. And once again, remember Tom's #1 rule, which is absolute respect for the individual. If you've never really used them, that's where you are. There's no judgment. Because what I'm doing today is I'm trying to help you take your next step with them. I'm trying to help you see something that would be useful, not just to you professionally, but also as you work with the learners in your program. So, and here we have, isn't the wonderful thing about this is the range that we have here, right? I love that. because that's what we have to respect and we have to honor and we have to learn to work with, not what I wish it were, not what you think it should be, but where each of us is in our programs. Did we make the switch back? All right, good. So you always return to guiding principle number one, absolute respect for the individual. Second one is the can-do statements. Now, many people are familiar with the proficiency scale. I'm going to ask you the same thing here. So quick, one way or the other. I'll give you just a few minutes to click on or use the QR code for this, and then I'm going to switch to where we see. Did it take you to the right page? I'm just curious. Or did it still go back to that first one? Right page? Okay, then when it went back to the first one, I can tell you why. That was user error. That was me. I tried to set up 9 different Google documents and QR codes and the links, and I think I may have gotten confused. So I really would appreciate whether you are joining us virtually or if you are here with me today, I really would appreciate the ability to kind of judge what your level of proficiency is with the can-do statements. And we call these the necessful, actful, can-do. I wore my shirt today just for that. I never get to wear this shirt, my necessful shirt, except at the conference. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to take that out of the closet because today I could wear that. We worked really hard on these, and they have proven to be extremely helpful, especially for Ryan, who you will meet in a minute. So here we are with the recap. You know about my 3 guiding principles. You know how AI can help every learner, every language. I hope you've had some ideas about that so far. And now to bring it all together, and that's Phil. How is it possible to reach any learner with any language? You can do it through facilitated interdependent language learning. Now, this is a short clip that may just, well, I think it'll blow your mind, at least some of you it will. I didn't say some of your minds, but.
Hi, my name is Ryan Allen, and I'm a high school Spanish teacher here at Del Mar High School. What you're seeing here is called Facilitated Interdependent Language Learning. It is essentially a language course where the students get to pick the language that they want to learn. In this class, I'm teaching Spanish, French, Italian, German, Greek, Turkish, Korean, Mandarin, Japanese, and American Sign Language.
"22 students. His background was as a Spanish teacher, no other languages. And it's interesting, this clip was made about a year ago. Ryan is really starting to change his vocabulary. He no longer introduces himself as a Spanish teacher. He's now a world languages teacher. And he no longer talks about he's teaching 10 different languages, because that's not what he's doing. He's helping kids learn 10 different languages in the same class. And here's kind of a remarkable thing. He has a long history as a very successful Spanish teacher. In Delaware, kids have to succeed at the novice high level in order to fulfill their world language requirement for the state. The normal sequence is kids take 2 courses, and then they hope that the kids are at that point. But like many traditional programs in many public schools, nobody really knows their proficiency level. They just go on, well, you know, Mary got a C on this test and an A on this one, a D on this one, but at the end of the year, she was doing well enough to get that second credit, so she fulfills her credit. That's not the way it works with his Phil class. In the Phil class, you don't get the credit until you are at novice high. And the reason we know where those kids are was they all took the stamp test and they were validated in an external validated assessment. And it could have been another one, but they were using stamp. They all were assessed using that instrument. Oh, that means I've got 5 minutes left. I see I set my, hold on. He had them for, they were on the block schedule. So he only had them for one semester. And after one semester, 16 of those kids being assessed in languages that Ryan does not know with an external assessment, 16 of those kids reached novice high in half the time that the kids in the traditional Spanish program that he taught as a Spanish teacher took. Does that seem remarkable? Because, see, Ryan understood that his job was not to teach the kids Czech or Ukrainian or Hindi or German or whatever. His job was to help them learn the language that they wanted to learn. Right? It's really remarkable. And I'm going to speak more about that in the workshop this afternoon. Well, it's actually not this afternoon. It's right after this. So a few other things. I'm just going to quickly go through these because I want to be conscious of the time. So I don't know what you've done with AI, but it's wide open. It's, nobody should be using a textbook in 2025. Nobody should be using common lessons, even in your community-based programs. But respect for the individual, Tom, right? And that means many of you may see this and say, well, wow, that does sound kind of neat, but I'm not there yet. I'm still going to rely on the curriculum that I have. And what's my response? No, my response is, you know what? I respect you. You are going from what you know to what you don't know, right? So you do an excellent job with what you're doing, but you always see the possibilities and you always think, you know what? I heard this weird guy one time talking about this and this, and he made his phone speak in Hindi. So try it. And so not only linguistic, but cultural things, just so many of these. And actually, I did this using ChatGPT. I just said, give me a list of ways that AI could help with linguistic resources. Boom. Give me a way that it could help with cultural resources. Boom. Right there. I mean, anybody can do that without too much of a stretch. So we're not going to take time for this, but it is time to recap. Yeah, I took the photo on the left and I said, give me something to help talk about recapping ideas. So I'm a person, my daughters, when they were growing up, used to groan at my puns. But so I hope today you remember these 3 guiding principles: absolute respect for the individual, transparency of expectations, and never put a learner into a situation where they're not ready to succeed. And the second concept that we talked about was every learner, every language. And here's why I say that. Many of us have a background with traditional teaching. I was an AP French teacher. Kids coming in ninth grade into French 1, what's the goal? Well, my goal might have been to get them through AP, but what if I had, now I've forgotten his name. What's the travel guy that does all the European, Rick Steves. What if Rick Steves had come into your classroom as a ninth grader and you said, Rick, I'm going to help you get to AP French. And Rick said, you know what? I really want to be a tour guide. And I think it would be better that my goal was to get to novice high in 4 languages rather than to advanced in 1. You know what your response could have been? Hey, Rick, I'm a language teacher. I can help you do that. Because the learner should have the right to set their goals, and you then help them meet their goals instead of expecting them to meet your goals. So, and we also had a fill overview. So I told you this was transparency of expectations. Just real quick, rather than write it down on the Google Doc, what's one idea that you've had for your program using AI today? Yes, Anna. Oh, yeah, thanks. There. No, nobody had any ideas that came to them today about what you could do? Give me one. Ah. Oh, sorry. Here you go. Yeah, it's easy.
Can the online guys hear me? So this is Ana Lúcia, Brazilian Portuguese, work with Brasi, the Brazilian association here in the DC area. I think that the possibility of, well, many of our schools work with the principle of student-centered planning and programming. I think the AI infinite possibilities can help us customize activities, lesson plans, even to one classroom that might have 10 different student profiles. So
I call it hyper personalization. And I'll talk a little bit once again about that in the workshop. So just to give you a quick idea about the workshop, we're going to be talking about personalizing progress with a fill approach, how to look at your programs, how I can help you meet your goals. But don't come if you don't want to work, because it's a workshop, not a sit shop. So I will be expecting you with a device to be doing some work, right? That we will then share. All right. What's that? Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, probably not. Okay, good. If Joy says it's okay, then it's okay. She's
Right in 1 minute. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, my name is Roxana Sanishin, and I have multiple hats. I'm a faculty in ESL, English as a Second Language Education at Penn State Abington, and I'm also on the school board of Ukrainian Heritage School. And I really appreciated when you kind of emphasized to us that we have to meet students where they are, because this is something that I often tell my students in teacher education classes. And then also when you mention ACTFL can-do standards, The same applies in ESL education. So it's relevant to all different language learners, whether they are English language learners, multilingual learners, or heritage language learners. And I think there is a lot that we can all share, because I go to TESOL conferences, I go to MLA conference and here, and I think all these conversations are very important because sometimes we forget. And there was one more thing, about AI. I don't always trust it. I have to say that we have to be very careful. I know how ChatGPT can lie. So we really have to be experts. We have to know what we are doing, and we always have to check before we share what it produces. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we could have an AI conversation. And to wrap up, I believe in the principle of balance in the universe, and that for every wonderful thing that AI can do, there will be a corresponding negative, right? So I am not just a blind endorser of it. I certainly echo what she said about, trust but verify.
That's true for people too. All of us mess up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tom. Let's thank Tom. Thank you. Thank you. Let's start the workshops at 11:05 so that we have a 15-minute break.